Right, welcome. Good evening. So Patrick asked me who I met in 2015 when we did the Blue Economy Summer School, and has been super active here locally in Arnhem with amazing results we were talking about today. He's asked me to present Blue Economy in, let's say if we were to use the types of principles in where I'm coming from, Cyprus, how we could envision the island over the years if we were to implement the principles. So this is what this presentation is about. You may see common factors with your challenges as well. So I'll start off with looking a bit at the global challenges, and I'll look at a bit more what's happening in Cyprus, what the present status is in Cyprus, and then take you on a bit of a natural path, and then end up with some solutions that we can implement. So that's our beautiful blue planet. And so what are the challenges that we have? So there's a lot of challenges. Professor Ångström at the Stockholm Resilience Center has actually created with his team, taking data from scientists all over the world and putting them together, has identified 9 basic planetary boundaries. So what has been somewhat discovered is, as long as we stay within the safe zone, which is the blue line here, we are able to predict what's going to happen in our planet. Between this level and this level, we are still unknown, because we don't know the outer level how far it is, but we are sure that if we go beyond this level, there is going to be changes that are actually unknown effects, but it will be something that we have no idea where it's going to go. So ideally we want to be staying within here if we want to have everything as normal, and definitely do not exceed here. So right now you can see we've already passed 3 of them. This is actually one half of that one. So genetic diversity, we've killed basically over half of the biodiversity on the planet so far, which causes a very dangerous situation when it comes to biodiversity. In biodiversity you have the ability to adapt to changes. This is definitely industry, but definitely agriculture, modern agriculture. So your fertilizer, we have an excessive amount of phosphorus and nitrogen on the planet at the moment, causing dead zones and polluting waters and so forth. And that's well beyond, so we actually don't know what's going to happen with the amount we have. Even if we were to stop tomorrow, the planet is going to still be reacting to this. Freshwater use, still okay. Land systems change. This is like cutting down the forest to create land for agriculture and so forth. That is already past the safe zone and is approaching a tipping point. And you can see the other ones, climate change, that's our the concentration of CO2 in the air, as well as other aspects. Again, we've passed our safe zone. You can see ozone. Remember, ozone in the 80s and 90s was very prevalent, and we've actually managed to stop the chemicals that were causing the problems there, and it has actually reduced down to its normal or a safe zone. And aerosol loading, that is again unquantified, but as we were seeing in the climate launch pad, the lady who was talking about the atmosphere, it is actually in a very critical state at the moment that we can't really quantify. That's why there's no thing, but it's causing a lot of issues. So why do we care about this? Well, okay, we're talking about the environment. Why do we actually care? Well, I'm sure everyone here knows, but some people don't really see the connection. But our living habitat, our ability to survive on the planet, is directly connected to the exchange of carbon dioxide to the production of oxygen from plant life on the planet. So if we continue destroying our lungs, which are the plant life, we are going to run out of our basic needs. So it is absolutely essential that we reconnect to realize the importance of nature around us. So let's introduce Cyprus quickly. Let's go here. So I'm sure you're all familiar. This is the Mediterranean. You've got Italy and Greece, and then on the east side of the Mediterranean, you've got this island called Cyprus, which currently it's about 10,000 square kilometers, or 9,000 square kilometers, 1 million population. 1960 it received its independence. 1974 there was a division, as you can see, and then in 2004 has joined the EU. So this is the landmass we'll be looking at today for the presentation. So economical and ecological challenges facing Cyprus. So water capture. Right now, around 86% of the water that lands on the island is actually evaporating or transpiring off the island. And we actually don't have many mechanisms to actually stop the runoff of water. We don't have any natural barriers or techniques that we're using to actually keep the water on the land. And we do have about over 100 dams, but they are sometimes empty, sometimes not functional, and so forth. Water management, we have over-pumping by agriculture, and there's a lot of illegal wells. People who build a new house, they have a well there, so they don't have to pay for water. There used to be actually between municipalities how the water system run. Now it's just been recently fixed, but there used to be a lot of arguments who's controlling which water, and things were not on the right level from one drawing to the other. So there was a lot of resistance there, but there's now a new initiative to connect everything. Of course, the depleting water table, basically we're over pumping. So we have a reservoir, I think it's 450 million tons of water access, but we recharge about 86 per year, but we're pumping about 120, I believe, per year. So we're actually, over time, we're depleting our water table. Food security, again, that plays in with the water. And with climate change, we've had, let's say this year, a lot of our potato crop has been destroyed through the hail damage. So it makes things a lot more insecure as a change is happening. Then we have our practices. The majority of the farming on the island is done through modern agriculture techniques, which are non-sustainable, and they are actually damaging. It's a major contributor to the world as we see it today, as damage-wise. And even though it's 1.9% of the GDP, we're still about 90% of the groundwater that's being used is primarily for agriculture. So it's contributing very little to the GDP, yet it's using a lot of the water. And of course the topsoil, so you have hot, dry climate, which means the topsoil, which is your productive soil where you grow things, with the changing weather, with the winds, we have obviously that being blown off, and in the winter with the heavy rainfall. So the pattern of rain has changed. So before we used to have like certain years, like 4 years it was constant rain, then 2 years without rain, and then 1 year really, really heavy, and it would repeat. That no longer exists. And so we don't know when the rain comes, and it's typically much more intense, and usually with possibly hail. And so these are the new conditions we have to actually design around. And if we continue business as usual, we will be looking like the rest of the region environmentally, meaning very arid and somewhat desert-like. So we're on this course at the moment. Here we're looking at the economic aspect. I won't go too deep into it, but you've got uncertainty of the situation. Obviously you have a divided island, so you don't know which way it's going to go. You have Syria next door, so that's can be positive and negative, but there we have obviously it's about 60 miles away, so it's very close by. There is that could affect our tourism as well. We're right now at a point where a lot of the funds, the economy is being funded by selling passports. So basically, if you invest more than 2 million euros into either an enterprise or private residence and so forth in Cyprus, you have access to the passport scheme. So a lot of foreigners are coming in, whether it's Russian or it doesn't really matter where from, and this has now caused in the last 3-4 years an uprise in large developments. So in Limassol, which is the seaside town, the southern seaside town, you have a lot of high-rise buildings going up 30-40 floors with super expensive apartments and so forth, all to serve this type of demand, which is again visually ruining what's going on, and also the construction of them is actually damaging the environment. So all the wastewater is just being thrown in the sea and so forth. So it's a challenge to try and control them. And also what we've had for many years is a brain drain. So because we haven't really developed our tech or our research capacity, we do have it now starting to build up, but in the past and compared to other like a Silicon Valley or something, we don't have either the investment capacity or the institutions to actually keep the brains of the Cypriots that go abroad to study, to actually keep them on the island. So that when they develop something new, they're developing it on the island and sharing the knowledge there, and then if that gets profitable, keeping those profits on the island. So that's also a big issue that we have. So, with all this good news, let's have a vision for where we want to take the island. So we have basically, to create resilience, we want to look at consist of multifunctional solutions that are win-win for the environment and the economy. So we've identified the environment is super important. We identified it's going in a very unpredictable direction at the moment. And yet we do also need an economy to thrive on the island, so we need to actually marry the two to get stability and resilience over time. And so it's a transition to a regenerative economy. It's all about seeing the world in a different way. So we actually have to change the paradigm of how actually economies function, and shift an ecological world view in which nature is the model, regenerative process that defines thriving living systems must define the economic system itself. So this is our foundational point that we will work from, and this is what the blue economy is all about.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
When you are talking about we, who is we? Is it only a group of active people?
No, we as humanity, we as the species of the humans who are, we've shifted actually from the Holocene era, which was the last 10,000 years of stability, weather stability on the planet, to now the Anthropocene, which is actually the impact of human activity is actually changing the planetary systems. So we as the cause of this change need to actually start shifting into a newer way of working with nature.
Okay, so this is not local we, but you're talking about the global we.
The global we, exactly,
yeah, okay.
exactly. Such as we are here in the room. Yeah. We're already doing this. So Gunter Pauli, I don't know if have people heard of him. I'm sure through Patrick you've heard the name on the walls here. He's been working on this since the early 90s and has done massive projects around the world. But in essence, this is what he's looking at. Basically, we're starting with a very strong ethics. So ethics can be debatable, but basically what that means is if you're doing less bad, it's still bad. In other words, reducing plastic waste, you're still producing or using plastic, but okay, you're not doing so much of it, but it's still affecting the environment. So it's very quite strict in how you even when you build a new business, if there's even one waste stream that is actually environmentally either not being taken care of or environmentally harming, that's still out of the picture. Driven by a passion, so we really want to be following to keep us going, because it's what really drives us. It's not like business as usual per se. It integrates systems. Autoplace is self-managing, so in other words, once it's structured and built, you can actually leave it, and the community there then continues flowing with the project you've set up. So systemic is a very, very important aspect. We tend to, from our education through to how public bodies work and everything is siloed. So either, you know, if you have a PhD, it's going to be a PhD in physics, or it's going to be a PhD in a very siloed approach. And we're having to now shift to a systemic viewpoint. In other words, we have to start looking at the different systems, how they work, and then integrating these functions together. Zero waste, of course, outputs, so what waste streams do we have that can benefit other systems? Inspired and mimics nature, understands nature's symbiotic relationships, which we will go into this. It's sort of something, Patrick, you may not have seen, but I think it's very important, so I've put it into this presentation. Creates jobs, keeps the wealth local, explores tradition and culture, so that you've seen in certain cases here as well, and then creates diversity and provides for needs. So all of these are sort of like the bench points to guide you, or guide a community. So there's a good quote from Professor Gunter. You may have an ecological product, you may have an ecological industrial process, but do you have an ecological system? So again, it's all about, have you viewed what your impact is in a systemic way? So that's why the ethics are very strong. And again, it's inputs, outputs, and the processes and products. So to understand our impact on the environment, we must understand nature, how nature functions from a global systems perspective to a micro. So this is what we'll do now quickly. So on a macro level, the Earth itself, the planetary systems, are working with different cycles. So you've got the water cycle, the carbon cycle, nitrogen, and so forth. We may be thinking, well, you know, our country, like say Cyprus, is very small. Why do we need to concern ourselves? Because when we understand the bigger picture, when we design new businesses, when we design new things that are going to impact our community or our environment, we'll see how that can play along with these systems. Then you've got, of course, the soil runoff, the ocean currents. Of course, we may be living on land, but the ocean is much more important in some cases. Global heat dynamics, geobiology, atmospheric science. We're going to skip through some of these, but I'm going to talk a bit about some of them just to show the importance of why it's important to actually look at these type of systems. And then more on the micro level, soil structure, microbiome, and then the basics, the physics, biology, chemistry, biochemistry, and chemistry. So CO2, I think it was in the 60s, was the key factor that we could measure in a climate change perspective. And that's where we are now. We're always looking at trying to reduce CO2 emissions and so forth. However, if you're looking at the heat cycle of what's happening around the world and how heat is mobilized and moves around the world, it actually represents less than 4% of the heat cycle. So the global warming and all this, CO2 is very important, pollution-wise and so forth, yet it's actually the water cycle that's actually driving the majority of the change. Now, so the water cycle is basically what you see above here. You've got evaporation, then you've got rainfall, you've got the forests, you've got the groundwater and so forth. So we see here that the more we start cutting down trees, the more land that's left barren, the more we start to affect the water cycle. And when we do it in large cases, let's say the Amazon being cut down, South Africa or Africa, where they're doing a lot of burning and just practices that may have been traditional, but because of the population now are actually detrimental, we're actually affecting this in a massive way. And that's what's causing the majority of the climate change and the disrupt, the super hurricanes or I mean, we're having tornadoes in Cyprus, which were unheard of. You know, we've never seen those before. Now we have them. We've got hail, never had them before. Floods, never had them. Well, we didn't really have them before. So you're seeing these cycles and change, and that's maybe it's not us doing it, maybe it's sub-Saharan Africa, that big sandstorms we have now. It's every year we can get, like, we can't even see the sun bright, you know, in our atmosphere. It gets that bad sometimes. So as each of us in our own communities are working together, if we're understanding these type of cycles and we're saying, okay, yeah, okay, it's really important that we do have ground cover,